Alex here with part 0 of my review of The Respondent. It's a book. I think a lot of people who are on this channel probably know exactly what it is. I have not read a single page, even as I'm doing this video right now. I have no idea whether I'm going to agree or disagree with this book. I will do my best to to analogize it. I will do my best to analyze it chapter by chapter. And the only thing I ask really is that you stick with this all the way through to the end, because I am the type of person who will bluntly tell you that I disagree with a chapter, and then I might get to the next chapter and tell you that I completely agree with it. So you might get the vibe in a video that I think it's absolute garbage, only to find out in the next video that I think it's completely on point. So just, stick with it till the end. Who knows where this is going to go? I don't know where it's going to go. And I do want to mention that the reason I'm doing this is because one of my viewers posted down in the comments that they wanted to know what like my book list was. I guess they thought that I got through my child custody dispute by reading a certain list of books. I kind of did, but it's not what you guys think. It's a fantasy series that has nothing to do with child custody and family law. And it wasn't even really a step by step guide on how to get through the child custody system at all. It's more like a third parent that taught me things about truth and how to navigate deceit and misconception and misunderstanding and manipulation and trickery and all that stuff. And it wasn't even through a nonfiction lens. It was, like I said, fantasy. So that is the Sword of Truth series. That is the series done by Terry Goodkind, who passed away recently. Obviously, I have a huge emotional connection with it because I just described it as my third parent, conferred a ton of wisdom on me that I definitely benefited from, that definitely helped me get through my child custody dispute. But I don't think a lot of my viewers will relate to it because, as I mentioned earlier, it's really just a fantasy story. Um, do I recommend people read it? Not in the sense that I would rather they spend their time going through the My Docket series, because the 200 plus series is way more likely to be a more effective use of your time than to go through that series. Uh, if you guys really want me to talk more about that series, I will. Like I said, I'm really reluctant to do so because I just don't want to waste anyone's time. More importantly is, as I mentioned, that you watch the My Docket series, and even now, I'm actually more willing to do a series of videos on a book I haven't even read yet that I have no clue if it's going to be helpful than I am on that other series. So that's really the only significant amount of reading that I've done in the past, I don't know, 8, 9 years. I'm not a huge reader because I spend most of my time working on my projects. And if I had more spare time, I probably would be a good reader. Anyway, guys, I will go ahead really quickly and cover the prologue and my thoughts on it now. You're just going to have to give me a minute so I can read it, and then I will edit these 2 clips together. All right, I am back. That didn't take too long. I took some notes here. The At first it just seemed like a bunch of opinion, but then when I got towards the I guess the second half of the prelude, there are actually some mentions that I think I can talk about. So there's apparently a dedication by Johnny Depp. I guess he refers to it as exposing a cartel, being in the family court systems, like being trapped in a dungeon. Some kind of reference to the modern American divorce. I mean, these are good descriptions, I guess, of how it feels to somebody who has no clue what's going on. They feel trapped, and they do feel like there's a cartel. My opinion on uh, if there is a cartel, the reason why, in my opinion, is just pure ignorance. It's not that it's some sort of malevolent organization that is conspiring on some grand scale to rip all these people off that are going through the family court system. I think that it's just that regular people have zero understanding as to what any of it is. I think that there isn't any lobby groups that really care about any of that legislation, with the exception of the family bench bar, which is family lawyers and judges. And so it's really, in my opinion, this, if it is a cartel, it's not on purpose. It's just kind of this teeny tiny group of people that knows how it works, and they all on their own are trying to set their industry up in the best way possible, such that their interests come first. I really doubt that a lot of these family law attorneys and judges actually like rub their hands together. Oh, I can't wait to be evil. I don't think it's like that at all. I think they just subconsciously want the best thing that they can get for their career slash business, and it's turned into what it is now because nobody else really has any say in it. And the people who are in power and government don't even want to talk about it. It's just not a thing that matters to the people who are in power that could potentially oppose the family bench bar. And so they just kind of are left to their own devices. These are just sort of some fuzzy thoughts that I have when I hear the word cartel as a reference. I don't want to skip over that. I don't feel like it's fair to the author or apparently to Johnny Depp. So I did want to at least give my thoughts on that. I could talk about that more depending on how much the book gets into it. But for now, these are just some sort of fuzzy responses from me. Then there's a foreword by Alec Baldwin. Took some notes here. He refers to the California family law system as a criminal organization that inflicts pain and extorts money. Not really, because the laws allow them to do what they do. So there's nothing criminal about it. They've created, I mean, I'm assuming that similar to Nevada, that they've created the statutes, rules, and case law that they themselves are able to exploit to get what they want, which is typically attorney fees. I doubt that they sadistically inflict pain. I just think that they're ambivalent towards it, that they don't care. Most likely they blame the litigants themselves for going through it because they chose who to have a kid with and they're not sorting it out on their own and they're not settling the case, so it's all their fault. I really don't think that they think that much about that stuff at all. The rules were set up by them. They're following the rules that they set up, and in my opinion, there's nothing criminal about it. It's just the rules aren't really the way that they should be. The rules should change. And I talk about this in my other videos, mainly the issues surrounding discretion, especially attorney fee awards, and cost awards, not so much, mainly attorney fee awards. We could talk about that more if the book goes into it more specifically, but really there wasn't that much talk about it in that section. He says that it's all exacerbated by lawyers. I mean, of course it is. That's their job. Their job is to exploit the rules in a way that benefits their client and themselves. And so, of course, they're going to do that. This idea that you're going to fix the system by fixing the lawyers, in my opinion, is completely off base. Wrong-headed approach will never work. If you're going to fix the system, you start with the rules and then you work on the judges, create the rules that would minimize the harm to the family, and then purge the judges that don't comply with the rules. The judges have to follow the rules. They have to follow the laws. If you change the rules and the laws and they won't follow them, then you have to replace them with a judge who will follow them. So really, it's about changing the rules and then taking a look at the bench. If the bench is complying with the new rules, then they stay. If they're not, then you replace them with another judge. The lawyers, of course, they're going to exacerbate it. That's what they're always going to do. That's their job. It's their job to do that. It's their job to win, and they're going to do their job. So, I mean, of course, it's going to happen. Just people get fixated on that, and I think that really gets people sort of so obsessed with trying to get revenge on lawyers that they don't realize that you're not going to fix anything by constantly focusing on them. You're going to have to try and figure out how to change the rules, which has been happening. It's been happening with the joint physical custody laws and all that stuff. So even though it's not very well organized, even though it's slow, even though it's incomplete, there have been movements in the right direction. And hopefully those continue. They talk about how, or I guess Mr. Baldwin talks about how the family court system knows that parents will spend, quote, whatever is necessary to navigate, or unquote, to navigate the corrupt system. I mean, of course, that's their kids. There are a lot of people who are faced with court and they just walk away. They throw away thousands of dollars and they don't care. But when you put their kids on the line, yeah, of course they're going to spend, the money if they have it. There's plenty of examples out there of people who have hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars in assets, and they spend every last nickel on attorney fees because they can and because it's for their kids. It's true. Do they know that and it's like some kind of like plan? I don't believe so. I really don't. I think that the most of the attorneys have so many clients that it's like hot potato. They go from one client to the next. They don't really string the entire case together from beginning to end and know every little detail about it. I mean, I think the case comes as it comes, the hearings come as they come. They file things when they need to file things, and really the people who are aware of all of their money getting, taken in attorney fees are the actual parents themselves. So again, really just goes back to the rules. They call it a corrupt system, but really corrupt corrupt system, corruption, what does that mean? Are rules being broken? I mean, to me, corruption is there's non-compliance with the law. There's non-compliance with the rules. And I just go back to what I said earlier in this video, which is that they have set up the rules and the laws in a way that serves the industry. And you know what, guys? If you're going to call the family law system corrupt, you have to call pretty much all of the other lobbying groups corrupt too, because that's pretty much what any special interest or lobby group does. Whether you're talking about pharmaceuticals, whether you're talking about the military industrial complex, that's what they do. They go and they create rules and laws in a way that benefits them. Otherwise, why are they going to spend millions of dollars talking to legislators? There's no point to that. So they spend all these millions of dollars talking to legislators to set the rules in a way that benefits their industry, just like all of the other special interest groups do. They're doing what everyone else does. And if they're complying with those rules, that's not corruption. That's just really bad rules. To me, corruption would be like calling a judge at their house and saying, hey, I have this case here. I need you to rule in my favor. I'll give you 20 grand. Or, hey, I have pictures of you, at a strip club. I'm going to reveal them to the public unless you rule in my favor. To me, that's what corruption is. If you have a bunch of laws that allow you to do something that's really abusive, but you're complying with the law, that's not corruption. That's just complying with some abusive laws. So again, guys, you end up just going, I end up just going back to the beginning, which is if you don't like the rules, change the rules. And unfortunately, that requires a group that's more powerful than the family bench bar to have some kind of influence or say on the process. Right now, there isn't. It's just them just kind of setting up the rules that they want. And you just need, to have a competing group that's more powerful than them, or at least significantly powerful, that can say, hey, we don't want these, attorney fee statutes anymore. Get rid of them. Stuff like that. We don't want custody evals unless the family's making 100 grand or something. Whatever particular abuse they, regular people feel needs to go. They need some kind of powerful group that says, we don't want this, and if you don't get rid of it, then we're going to replace you as a legislator with somebody else who will vote, in the way that we want. That's my position on it, and I'm going to go ahead and continue. So I guess the author is Greg Ellis. I don't know much about him. Maybe next chapter I can do some research on him and talk a little bit about him. I just know his name is Greg Ellis. I'll look more into it soon. Custody evaluation, forensic accounting's senseless rules that affect the rest of your life. He talks about that in his prelude. I mean, these are mechanisms that the courts use to make a decision. Custody evaluations and forensic accounting both are, the former is to decide how custody and visitation is going to be, fleshed out. I guess that works. And then forensic accounting with the, division of assets and debts. He calls the rules senseless and that they'll affect the rest of your life. You know what? That's law. And it is true. People are starting to figure it out. That yes, you might not like, to learn about law. You might not think the courts matter. You might find it all boring. Well, you just got split up with your ex. Have fun finding out how your life is going to be changed by all these rules that you didn't care about before. You're going to either care about them now or your life is going to be adjusted, whether you want it to or not. Yeah, that's true. The thing about custody evals and forensic accountings, he doesn't go into enough detail for me to really give some kind of feedback on that. I have some issues on forcing parties to incur costs that they cannot afford, but that's not discussed yet, so I'm not going to talk about it. It might not even be discussed. We'll wait and see. He talks about this epidemic that rages in plain sight yet remains invisible. 4,000 children ripped away from parents daily. 1/3 of children who don't live with their biological father. 40% who haven't seen their father in more than a year. Epidemic that rages in plain sight yet remains invisible. That's true. That's true. The reason it's invisible is because there's no camera access to it. I do think that is one of the more insidious, we'll call it, I guess, agendas, opinions that the family bench bar tries to push, which is that they need to protect families by keeping cameras away. Not only cameras, but even keeping people out of the courtrooms. They even lock the doors, don't let people in to watch. Their opinion is, yeah, you can't do that because you'll, expose the family's secrets and stuff like that. What's happening is it's just creating a massive amount of distrust. The public is more aware now than ever that there are things going on in family court that are unsettling. I don't think that a majority of the public thinks that it's corrupt or that it's a cartel, but I think that a majority of the public is afraid of it and finds it unsettling. And um, yeah, it's an invisible epidemic because people don't know what's going on. And the press rarely covers it in a way that it actually shows the proceeding itself. Sometimes the press will cover a conclusion, and oftentimes the press will cover a case that spills into criminal court. So you'll probably have a family court case, and then somebody kills somebody else. The mom kills the dad, or the dad kills the mom. Or maybe the child goes and shoots up a school. And that case will go, into the press because then it's spilled into criminal court. And so people will be able to see the criminal part of it all. But nobody really knows what's going on in the family court. Nobody knows what really happened to lead to the situation that the criminal court is now trying to clean up. So you have these messes that the family court is not really dealing with in a correct way, and these messes spill out of the family court boundary. And now you can get a camera on it, and so now the public is trying to find out, okay, there's this aftermath that's really horrible, and we don't really know what happened in family court. They often don't even talk about it. It's just the word invisible is a great adjective to describe um, this so-called epidemic. Um, epidemic. Do I agree with that? I kind of have to, because I don't know, probably more than half the families out there are experience a breakup. I would guess. He says 40% haven't seen fathers, so maybe the other 10-15% is the other side of the coin, which is kids that haven't seen their mother. Yeah, I mean, it's not a minority situation anymore. Probably, go into any classroom, probably half the kids are with their natural parents and half of them aren't. So yeah, I mean, if you want to call that an epidemic, I guess it's fair, and it's probably worldwide. It's relationships. Same thing in the world. You're gonna have people that aren't, together after a while. They break up. And I mean, if they're probably going to go into family court, if they're going to want to deal with child custody and visitation and child support and all that. $60 billion a year family law system. I don't know the number, if the number is accurate. I don't know. I mean, it's probably something that's easy to look up. Um, is that a problem? When you have all these hundreds of millions of people going through it, I guess the number isn't that shocking. Definitely, they have to deal with the money problem, because that is one of the most abusive things that an attorney or a judge can do to a family, is the imposition of unnecessary attorney fees and costs. In my opinion, that is probably one of the best ways to mitigate the outrage that some of the people who've gone through the system that feel abused are discussing in public or with their friends and family. If the family court system finds a better way to deal with the imposition of costs and attorney fees, custody evaluation, and parental coordinators, they could probably reduce between 50 and 80% of the animosity directed at them. The problem is that the attorneys want that money, as do the third party, what do they call them? Providers, third party providers, specialists, whatever. And the judges who used to be attorneys, and typically family court judges used to be family court lawyers, they will be aware of what the expectations of those lawyers are. I probably, in most situations, the family court judges are going to be beholden to the family court lawyers in most situations. Parents are not going to have any kind of influence. It's going to be mostly the lawyers. And in second place might be the state's Department of Family Services / CPS system. They'll have very powerful influence on the family court system in that state. But for the most part, the parents are the weakest. And so that's the issue, I think, is that the parents are injured by and outraged by the exploitation, the financial exploitation, and the family court lawyers and the third-party providers need that money. In their eyes, I think need is the word that I think that they feel. So I don't think that that's something that's going to correct itself on its own, not even with press coverage. In my opinion, they're going to just have to be overpowered by families. That's what it's going to have to be. And I'm not talking about in court. In court, you're not going to be able to solve that problem. It's going to be legislative. Dads feel, by the way, talk about that a tiny bit. California apparently has a statute that actually forbids using custody evaluations, or directing a family to use counseling or something like that, unless they consider the ability of the family to pay for those services. In other words, if they can't afford it, the court can't order it. That's a good start that California has that I haven't seen in other states, but I haven't looked at it, too much. So maybe that's more common than I think. Um, let's see. He says dads feel pain as much as a mom, but dads are stoic about it. Dads kill themselves 8 times as often as moms do. So yeah, I mean, there's a disbalance, or there's not. I mean, obviously, there's not going to be a balance because this is probably from the perspective of primary physical custody to moms. The parent who gets primary physical custody is probably going to have less of a desire to commit suicide than the parent who doesn't. So the suicide rate is probably very consistent with the physical custody award. Maybe that changes now because there's a shift towards joint physical custody. So that's probably what that is there. Not as remarkable to me. I mean, I can understand why people would commit suicide over going through that situation. I can understand it, even though I wouldn't do it. I can understand why they do. Calls it a national health emergency. I don't know about that. More likely, I don't know if I would call it a national health emergency, but I would call it maybe it could get to the state of a national emergency someday if people are so afraid of the family court system that they actually stop having kids and that they actually stop getting married. I mean, that sounds like a stretch, though. I mean, could it get there? I doubt it, but could it get close, or could it at least have enough of an impact that it concerns the government? Then yeah, that I could see that as potentially happening, especially if communication on the family court system continues to happen through social media. He's saying the book is not intended as a vehicle for, I think he said, revenge. It doesn't matter. I get the point of it. Whether it's intended as that or not, we will find out. In my opinion, I don't know yet. I mean, this is just the beginning. He's upset that society is blindly supporting the family court system, and I don't agree with that. I don't think that they're blindly supporting the system at all. I think that they're just blind and ignorant, and that they're just not paying attention. And so it's like I said earlier, there's this power vacuum, and there's this teeny tiny group of people who are controlling the rules. And it's not that the society is supporting that teeny tiny group of people. It's just that they don't understand it and they don't care. And so they don't get in the way. They don't oppose them. They don't fight them. And because the press doesn't talk about it, there's not even really a press angle there. It's just a power vacuum. That's all it is. Um, let's see here. He talks about what's driving people to support the draconian family court system. Again, same thing. There's nothing driving people to do any such thing. They don't think of the system as draconian. I don't think that they understand the system. I don't think that they get what the court system is doing in the family court at all. I think that they understand some of the criminal court stuff, like these, you have a right to a jury and you have a right to be proven, innocent until proven guilty and all that. But I don't think people really connect that to family court. And it's just, they're not driving, they're not driven to support it. They just don't care. It's a nothing burger. It says due process is extinct and the presumption of innocence is illusion. Well, that's, I guess, a confusion or a misunderstanding in some sense, is that, like I was saying earlier, is people have some kind of understanding of criminal court because they know about juries, they know about innocent till proven guilty, they know about all that stuff, but they probably don't know that different court systems work in different ways. There isn't really a beyond a reasonable doubt burden in family court. It's the preponderance of the evidence. They probably have seen a lot of TV shows on like Law and Order and all that, and the type of evidence that comes before family court is way less convincing. He says due process is extinct. I don't know about that. Maybe the family court judges don't follow it as much as the other judges because they don't get appealed as much. So that might be more just the fact that they just aren't challenged. If the family court judges aren't challenged, then they become a law unto themselves. So, I mean, I guess I could see how due process would be ignored in family court. I do see sometimes appellate dispositions that overturn a family court's ruling because of due process violations. So, for me, though, it's not like on purpose. It's just a criminal judge gets appealed. Let's throw a number out there. Let's just throw a number out there. A criminal judge gets appealed 100 times, gets all this feedback from the Supreme Court, and then a family court judge gets one appeal and is getting hardly any feedback from the Supreme Court. And so, like I said, I mean, if your boss is just never there, you become a law unto yourself, and that's where I think a lot of that stuff comes from. Okay, he says that I like this. This is good. He says that Greg Ellis, he himself, is dead. In that courtroom, he is a nameless respondent. Yeah, I talk about that in the video, The Machine. It's absolutely true. You are just, it's a conveyor belt. You know, you go in, you get fleeced, you come out the other side. Nameless, I think that's accurate. Are you just the respondent to the court and the lawyers? For the most part, yeah. And that probably would apply to any kind of court, civil, criminal, same thing. It's a machine, and you're going to get processed. I mean, that's just the way that it's designed because, you know, let's take a city, population, let's call it 1.5 million, and judges. How many judges does a city at 1.5 million have? 30? So, I mean, how are they going to give you all personalized attention? They're not. It's this teeny tiny group of rogue judges trying to process a society of millions. Now, they're not all going to end up in court, but a lot of them are. So yeah, it is a machine. You do lose your name. You are just a respondent, and I talk about that in my video, The Machine. Rebuilding divorce court, revitalizing the image of the family. I'm not so certain that the image of the family was ever. I mean, I don't know what that means. Rebuilding divorce court. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, none. I don't. I mean, it's a nice sentence right at the end, with no meaning behind it. You know, you can't really get. I think maybe what he means is getting society involved in rebuilding it, not just complaining about it and the government rebuilding it for you, because that's not going to solve any problems, at least not in my opinion. If you want society to get involved in rebuilding it, you have to show society how it works. So I guess we kind of just did full circle back to what I said earlier, which is people have to know what it looks like. They can't just read about it. They can't just go through it. They have to know what it looks like. So, I mean, 2 times already, cameras in family court, which is also what Judge Judy advocates. If you want to know what I'm talking about, watch her interview on Norm Macdonald. She talks about how, in her opinion, the way to solve the problem is to invite cameras into the family courts. So I guess this is a good review for part 0, guys. I'm actually looking forward to part 1. I'm going to do the same thing, take a bunch of notes, and then give you guys my feedback on what I think. But for now, I will see you guys next time.